On Wednesday, I took on what was probably the toughest combination in Gran Turismo. It was a direct replica of the World Series race in Berlin, driving the Red Bull X competition car at the Red Bull ring. A lot of Red Bull. And we had constantly changing weather conditions. And by the way, this was the part of the Nations Cup. And if you're not familiar with it, the Nations Cup is a series of races where players represent their countries, earning points across several rounds. Those points contribute to their overall rankings, and during the official season, players can actually qualify for a live event. This, however, was just an exhibition series, basically a little warm-up for the real thing. And overall, my experience wasn't exactly ideal. I was driving one of the most difficult cars in this game, dealing with unpredictable weather and racing in a split full of World Series level drivers. I mean, I can just say it. My qualifying didn't go as planned, but to be fair, finishing the qualifying in 12th place on the grid wasn't exactly the worst start of the race. Well, it all started off relatively okay. My qualifying, should I say, wasn't exactly the best one, but overall, the start of the race was pretty decent. But unfortunately, since this car is incredibly fast, it's really hard to judge when someone ahead is going to brake. And I ended up in a pretty tight situation where I just didn't know what to do. And as you can see in this video, braking with this car is incredibly difficult. Even if you slightly miss your braking point and someone is braking slightly sooner than usual, it's very hard to avoid them. But somehow I was actually able to avoid everyone in this opening lap. But I should also say that I got myself into a pretty tough position straight from that first lap. I thought I even picked up a penalty, but somehow I actually managed to avoid it. And by that point, the car has kind of felt okay, but it was really slippery, and the race started to settle. And unfortunately, when I tried to avoid Slayer's car, mine suddenly snapped and I completely lost control. I mean, all I wanted to do was just stay clear of him, but instead I lost the position and dropped to the very back of the grid. And after that, I somehow managed to gain a place or two because a few drivers pitted really early, which actually wasn't ideal since the tires don't really last long on this car. And for the next few laps, I actually had an intense battle before it was finally time to pit. I switched to the soft tires, and you'll see later why that decision turned out to be so important. And even for my next two races. Once I was on the softs, it was actually crucial to avoid the wet part of the track because the car can easily slide. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. I touched the wet line and the car snapped sideways. And at that moment, I just knew it. The race was pretty much over. And there is really no way of getting it back. Getting onto that wet section is, basically, as I said, it's game over, and it's really hard to get back into the race. And I think my facial expression said it all. And the interesting thing was how the weather kept changing. It actually shifted a few times throughout the race, and soon we had rain again. So I pitted for the intermediates, and just as the race started to look a little bit better for me, I began making more mistakes. So in this situation, that's never good. And with this car, you just never know when it's going to snap. And once it does, you're basically a passenger. And in those slippery conditions, the only real goal is to avoid making an even bigger mistake. When the race finally settled down again, I started to see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and unfortunately, my tires didn't agree with that. They were in a terrible shape, to the point where I could barely turn, and eventually the rear of the car just snapped and I lost control again. But to be fair, I wasn't the only one struggling. Many drivers had very similar issues because it was just an incredibly tough race. Somehow, I managed to get the car over the finish line and actually finish this race. And for the next one, I was hoping for a better race. But things started off with a couple of spins and I would say quite a big dive straight away. Why do you have to be the smartest guy? And yeah, that's my start. I don't really like being pushed like that, especially in turn 1. Giving a bit of space is fine, but leaving me no room at all on the outside of the corner is just not okay. This is something that I really don't like. Somehow, I managed to recover the position and even tried going on the outside of the next corner because I had a pretty solid run up the hill. But once again, there was a bit of a contact and I got pushed wide, losing the place that I just gained. Oh, Zotti spinner. But somehow I managed to settle into a pretty decent rhythm and found myself in 11th place, which definitely was not bad for the start of the race. I knew though that all of the drivers who had spun earlier wouldn't make it easy on me. I kept pushing and managed to gain another spot after someone else spun out. Then I tried to squeeze myself on the outside and I just tried to go for another move. But once again, it ended in a pretty similar scenario. Wonderful start, really. Oh, whoa! There he goes. And I think this moment really showed how easy it is to lose control of this car on this track. Somehow, I was running in 10th place, but I didn't want to make it too hard for Antonio to get by since, I knew he had more pace. And my plan was to stay close to him, follow him in his slipstream, and actually use his speed as my advantage, which actually started working at that one point. But actually, I did that twice because those two guys were really, really quick. But this car can be absolutely brutal. And touching the curb in these conditions is something that you definitely want to avoid. And just like in my previous races, it was time to pit, change the tires and get back on the road. And unfortunately, as I exited the pits, I pushed it a little bit too hard. I did get under the dry line. And I guess after that, I just tried to settle into my own rhythm. I made a few mistakes, but I guess it just wasn't my day. And when the rain started, I nearly lost control of the car again, just like in the previous race. I pitted, but those conditions are always tough to handle. And at that point, losing control, it felt like a pattern. And the race just really wasn't going anywhere. And the worst part of the whole story is that when you're behind someone and trying to really push hard to make up some ground, you end up overdriving the car, eventually trying too hard. And that's my problem. And you're just only making it worse. And later on, I decided to pit for another set of soft tires, hoping to avoid the same issue that I had in the previous race. And unfortunately, I kind of hit the slippery curb, and that was it. I spun, and my race was basically over. I still did manage to get the car over the finish line, but this is where I just called it a day. I closed the stream, but I just couldn't let it go. It was probably my worst racing day I had in a very long time. And then I went again. So in my next race, which I actually did off stream, things started looking better. I qualified in 6th place, and the start of the race went much smoother than I expected. Okay, maybe my face said it could have been a little bit better, but overall, I actually started to make some real progress. I was still around the position where I started. Actually, I was in the position where I started, but the race was looking good at this point. And I think this time, I felt like I had proper control over the car. I just didn't feel like before, so when I was constantly fighting to keep it steady. That little dive definitely did not help, but I just couldn't ignore that my pace was slightly improving, or should I say, my consistency improved. And I just stayed in the slipstream for as long as I possibly could, trying to make the most out of it. And you will also probably notice that in some of the corners I was exiting in higher gears than usual. I might have not carried as much speed as I maybe wanted, but it definitely helped to keep the car stable. I even avoided the bumps in turn 1 to prevent unsettling the car. And after a few laps, I found myself behind P5. And then I managed to grab a position completely unexpectedly. And I just think that this really shows how important it is to stay on the dry part of the track. He just touched the curb, it was slippery, and that was it. I got a place. And I mean, I just tried to stay in the slipstream because I was in 5th place. And then it's this, I'm going to say, very tricky corner on the uphill section. I mean, it's kind of an uphill section, you don't really realize it. And then I had a slightly better speed coming out of the corner and managed to get it. I mean, I climbed up the hill, got a better run, and took 4th place, which was really nice at that point. I mean, I just started wondering if this was actually real because the race was actually going incredibly well. Everything felt right. The only thing that I wanted was just to avoid mistakes. I mean, I kept on pushing, but in some of the situations, I kept it a bit easier than maybe I probably should have. So the lap times felt good, and then on lap 5, something completely unexpected happened. What is that? What happened was that the leader lost the car. That was it. He went over the curb, pushed slightly too hard, and spun. That was exactly why I kept using higher gears to keep the car stable, and suddenly, top 3 got into a battle, and once again, the leader was taken out. And I just managed to gain another place from that. I mean, what really surprised me though was that 4-second penalty. I mean, I knew that I just didn't have to push at this point. I'm in 2nd place, the driver in front of me has a 4-second penalty. So we even went side by side. And I mean, there was really no point of taking that risk. I just lifted a little bit because that's what I just had to do, because a 4-second penalty is a 4-second penalty. And I just took that place and I was actually leading this race. But then the focus was on, well, getting a nice and solid run out of the pits, because it was time to pit once again. Okay, I definitely was not expecting that the situation was going to develop like this, but it's still the start of the race. Let's see. And now I used all of the previous knowledge that I had. I mean, I guess I learned from some of my lessons, at least one of them, and the other guy pitted a lap earlier, which allowed him to get ahead. But I was still running in 6th place, which was already a huge improvement compared to my last races. And when the few other drivers pitted, I found myself in 3rd place. So I'm actually on the podium, and the only real challenge was, I mean the only one, keeping the car on the road in these kind of semi-dry, semi-wet conditions. Then on lap 9, I saw a chance when Captain JJ went slightly wider than usual. I mean, got onto the wet part of the track. And I just had to go for it. I took the inside line, used every bit of slipstream that I could, got a really nice run up the hill, and suddenly I was in 2nd place. Imagine that, 2nd place. Sure, I mean, this lobby was a bit slower than the previous ones, but for me, it was more about consistency and control. I mean, for the next couple of laps, I just tried to stay as focused as possible and really keep it smooth. And the Hungarian driver behind me was really quick, and I think he just had more confidence, and I just didn't want to hold him up too much. I even made that small mistake. He passed me, and then I was running alone. Still, a podium looked really realistic. I mean, then, once again, we had the rain. Usually, there is this short patch of rain when the track gets slippery and you just have to survive that part. Then, almost suddenly, it starts drying out and you can push again. It's like really weird situation. And during that phase, I went as slow as possible just to keep it on the road. Just basically trying to survive that lap and save the tires. And once things settled, I pitted again, and this time for the intermediates. Oh man, but I think this race is actually looking really, really good for me. If I don't make a mistake and bring it home. That's exactly what I tried to do after running in that second place. I mean, I had to be a bit defensive over the next few laps, but I really tried to make the most out of it. The French driver behind me had slightly better pace, and unfortunately, we got into this battle, and we were just losing a lot of time. Of course, he pitted a few laps earlier, which meant that his tires were not in the best shape. But he had the inside line, and somehow he got past. I mean, we actually had a pretty solid battle for a while, but I mean, since he pitted a few laps earlier than I did, which meant that his tires would wear out much faster, I knew that eventually his pace would drop. I mean, I just didn't want to push too hard and really fight him constantly. I mean, I just didn't want to lose time. I mean, we were both losing time at that point, and it was really no good. Pushing on this track in these conditions with these cars, never a good idea. So my focus was just on staying consistent, really avoiding mistakes and saving those intermediates, since my plan was to take them to the end. I mean, looking back, that plan turned into something that I probably should have avoided altogether. And on lap 23, both French drivers decided to pit again, while I stayed out. And that was the biggest mistake of this race. I knew the risk, but I just wanted to see if I could potentially make it work. And I told myself, I just had to try. I'm going to do it. I mean, I was aware of the possible downsides, mainly losing grip or spinning, but I just felt like the tires might hold on. Unfortunately, by lap 29, I could already feel the car slipping away. And by lap 30, the tires were completely gone. At that point, all I had to do was just bring the car home. The problem was, it just wouldn't stay steady. It kept sliding. I was really fighting the wheel the entire time, just trying to keep it on the road. I mean, I even lost that one position. I mean, I just had to go really, really slow. You can see how painfully slow this is and how am I actually fighting to keep this car on the road. I should have pitted, but I knew the downsides, I knew the risks. It was painfully slow actually, but somehow I managed to cross the finish line. As I said before, I knew the risks, but in the end, this race turned out much better than I expected overall. You know what, after all, I'm just so glad that it's over.